Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm going to put this on gallery view here. Yeah, at the moment they're just the three of us, and that may be all that we're going to be here. And maybe this will be a short meeting unless you guys have questions. But really, at this stage, this is actually week 7 of 6 weeks of these kind of sessions. So we only schedule for 6, but because we're coming together on Saturday, I just thought, all right, well, let's get together. If people have last minute questions, I did get details from Hiram. We'll be meeting at the field station. So the field station at Hiram College. I know it's not at the campus. It's somewhere a little bit away from that. But those of you who are familiar with Hiram probably know exactly where that is. And we'll be meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. You don't need to bring anything except your attention and your good humor, and wear comfortable clothing. We're going to be spending the day doing labs. So it's just, and we'll provide all the tools and everything that you need. Don't feel like you need to bring anything that first day. And then we'll start at 8. I usually try and get everybody oriented. We do about an hour of sort of a 30,000-foot level look at the world of solar. And then we'll jump in after everybody's mind's in gear, and we'll start doing the hands-on labs. You'll be working with systems in a classroom environment. They simulate what you'll be doing in the real world, but they're not energized, so you won't die, which is always a plus. I think that's kind of it. We'll go probably until about 4:30 or so. I'd encourage you, because of the remoteness of this location, maybe to bring something to eat. I think last time for Saturday, I went ahead and ordered pizza. So if pizza is not your cup of tea, then bring something. Like if you've got gluten issues, or we can get a veggie pizza, but whatever. So yeah, just be aware your choices will be limited as far as that. Now on Sunday, we come together, and again at 8 o'clock in the morning, we'll begin doing the review of all of the chapters. We'll go until everybody wants to stop. It usually goes until about noon. 4 hours is about as much review as anyone can handle. And I'll try and make sure we do a lot of the math questions as much as possible, because that's the ones that everybody sort of goes, oh my gosh, I thought I was cruising along, and then all of a sudden I hit chapter 7 and I'm freaking out, that kind of thing. So we'll touch base on that. So try and rush me along. I'll usually get long-winded, and before you know it, chapter 4 gets me all tied up, and I should spend more time on 7. So I'll try and rush through some of those early ones, because you don't need to know about Becquerel, but you might need to know how to size an array. So we'll do that. And then Sunday, for sure, I'd encourage you to bring your lunch or something to eat, because then as soon as we're done and we're ready, we'll take the examination. It'll be a pencil and paper exam, filling in the little bubbles on the Scantron sheet. I think it's nice that way, because technology doesn't get in the way. We could do it on computers, but then you have trouble with connectivity and people are whatever, and all of a sudden it adds a whole new layer to the whole process. Instead of just saying, do I know the answer? It's, will this answer be recorded, and do I get cut off, and what happens if they lose signal? All of that. So paper is easy. And so we'll do that. You'll have 2 hours to take the test. There are 75 questions. They're multiple choice. They're in the same kind of format as the questions at the end of the chapter. And except I think the questions on the exam are not as tricky. They're not designed to be tricky. Some of my questions are designed to be tricky a little bit. Plus, I have a lot of negative questions in my chapters, which will not appear on the exam. They won't say which of the following is not. They'll say which of the following is. I do it this way because I think it's a good learning tool. 3 of these are, one's not. Now you got to think about it. But you can be confused when you're taking a test. Which of the following is not? You'll not see the not, or there'll be a negative in one of the answers. And now it's which of the is not, it's never. And you're like, I don't even know what you're asking. So at that point, so these things are not designed to fool you. They're designed to just ask you questions. There are about 9, I think, math questions. So if you're freaking out about the math, you can miss all the math and still pass the certification, which is sad, but that's the case. So you need to get a 75% to get the certification, which means you can miss actually 18 questions out of the 75 and still pass. I personally believe if you've gone through the sessions, if you've answered all the questions at the end of the chapters, if you feel comfortable with that, you should do fine. None of this is a life or death thing. Ella, you had a question?
Yeah. Do we have the, how it is on the chapter quizzes, we get an answer. If we get it wrong, we get told what we did wrong. Does that happen on the exam as well?
You can. What you will receive is you got 82% or you got 87%. If you want to know which questions you got wrong, ETA will review that with you. Normally, people don't care if they pass. They're only care if they don't. But if you do have that question, I can keep a copy and look it up, and you can give me a call afterwards, and we can go over and say, well, you missed this one, you missed that one. Sometimes it's just a matter of just, duh, I knew that answer. I just answered the wrong thing. Yeah. Other times, you just have no clue. You just are like, really? That was in the book? I didn't remember seeing that, that kind of thing. There's a lot of information that you're having to absorb in a relatively short period of time. So yeah, you're gonna miss. I always think when I'm teaching the class, I think, well, these guys should get everything, right? Because we go over it. It's all there. Of course, you're going to remember it. And I think, well, but I've also taught this class 100 times and, gone over the questions that many times. And it's like, yeah, second nature. It was kind of funny when I had to take the exam myself, even though I was on the development committee that developed the exam. I thought that was a little bit strange. Most organizations, if you develop the test, they just sort of give it to you. But I had to go in and take it at the ETA offices. After I was done, they said, well, you did pretty well. You only missed 3. And I was like, no, I didn't miss any, and they're like, well, no, you missed 3. And says, okay, let's look. And we went in, and it turned out their answer key had 3 of them wrong, So I was like, no, this is not the right answer. You need to change your answer key, and you need to go back, and everybody who's taken the test, if they failed because they missed these questions, you gotta pass them, because I don't know where you got that answer. It's just not right. So anyway, so I was being very smug and all about it. But over the years, I think I've run maybe 450 people through the course. And I've only had 2 that got perfect scores out of all of those. One was a young woman who had just gotten out of the military, and the other was a monk. So go figure. So neither of them were, but I've had a bunch who've missed 1. But I will say most people pass by a little bit or fail by a little bit. So if you can miss 18, I would say most of the 95% are going to range between missing 12 and missing 24. It's going to be in that range. 95% of the people. It's rare to get somebody who only misses less than 10. And it's also rare, although it's happened where I've had people who have missed like 40% of them. You think, man, you should get like half of them anyway, just guessing. But, but Anyway, I'll try and emphasize when we're doing the review, the things I think are important for you to remember. Some of them, like the difference between how you size an inverter for a grid tied system versus how you size an inverter for a standalone system. That's important. Just how you size an array. Some of those math questions will go over string calculations. String calculations are difficult, but they're not important. There's 2 questions on the exam about string calculations. So it's important from that standpoint, but it's not important in the real world, because for the most part, most of our systems, that either is told to you by the manufacturer, you're going to need minimum this, maximum that, or you just don't do them because you're using microinverters or optimizers or whatever. So, but still, for the purpose of exam, you need to know why, how. Voltage drop equations, they're important and pretty easy, but usually what I found with the math things is once you know how to get started, you can pretty much walk through the process. But the trick is, where do I start? Like if I'm trying to figure out how to size a battery bank, how do I get started? What's the important thing? And I try and walk it through in the book and also in the review. Say, all right, what's the important thing when you're sizing batteries or an array? What's my daily load? That's where we start. Daily load. Well, daily load is in kilowatt hours per day. Batteries, I want to get from kilowatt hours per day to amp hours. So how do I get from kilowatts to amps? Divide by voltage. I divide by the voltage of my system. If I divide by the voltage of my system, now I've got amp hours per day. Well, how many days? Right? Now, if it's 2 days, if it's half a day, if it's 5 days, well, that gets me to that. All right. But that's if I use the whole battery. What's my depth of discharge? Divide by that. Now I'm almost there, but then I've got the inverter inefficiency. Divide by that, and then I'm there, right? So if you logically say, but the first step is kilowatt hours per day to, what do I need? Amp hours? Good, that's batteries. That's how I start. Now with arrays, I want to get from kilowatt hours per day to kilowatts. Well, I got to get rid of hours per day. Well, what hours per day? Not 24. I go by whatever the insulation is of my system at my location. If it's 4.2 hours of insulation per day, I divide kilowatt hours per day by insulation. That tells me the size of my array if it were 100% efficient, but it's not 100% efficient, so I divide it by its D rate. And that's my answer. Pretty straightforward. So this figuring out sizing of arrays, pretty straightforward. I divide it by hours of insulation, and I derate it by the inverter inefficiency, or by the system inefficiency. So that to me, again, after doing 500 of these, it's pretty straightforward. But for you, hopefully, if you can just logically puzzle it out, saying, here's where I'm starting, where do I want to get? Then with the string calculations, the easiest way I've got of figuring that one is if you just start out and say, you know what, how many of these panels can I hook together and not exceed the voltage limit of my inverter? If you start with that, well, then what's the most volts a panel can produce? VOC, right? Theoretical maximum voltage, VOC. So if I were to say my inverter can take 600 volts and the VOC is 38.2, well, I just divide 600 by 38.2. And that would give me an answer. It wouldn't be the right answer, but it would get me started, because voltage on cold days, the thing produces more voltage. On warm days, it produces less. So now I got to adjust for temperature. Well, how do I do that? I take the coldest day ever, subtract it from standard test conditions, which is 25, and it gives me how many volts deviation from standard test condition. Why standard test conditions? It's because that is what is used to create VOC or VMP or any of those. That's what is measured at that temperature. So what's the delta between the two? And then how much does it produce more or less? base, for every degree, that's the temperature coefficient. So I multiply that times the number of degrees, it gives me a percentage. So if it's 10% more volts on the coldest day, then I take whatever VOC is times 110%, and then I divide it into the inverter, and that gives me my answer. So again, logically, you're walking through it and just saying, and I'll give you a little hint. If you just simply stop after you say, what's my inverter and what's the VOC, and let's divide into it, you're going to be within one of the right answer, because temperature is going to affect it, but not that dramatically. So you're going to be close. At that point, you're going to narrow it down to 2 answers out of the 4, and I would just take what I got and add 1 when it's cold, and I'd take what I got and subtract 1 if it's hot, and you're probably going to get it right. That's kind of where you're at, but I'd rather you know the answer and you figure it out. But if you're smart enough to know this is what I'm after and this is going to be an approximation, that's good. You're almost there. Okay, so any questions from you guys for what to expect this weekend? You all have my phone number, my cell number, in case you running late, you want to get a hold of me. Let me just give it to you in case you don't. You should have it in correspondence, but it's 740-252-6038. So if you're running into trouble, can't find the place, running late, whatever, and you want to shoot me a text or call on the day, that'll be good. As far as the results, you will not know your results the day of the exam. That gets shipped back to ETA. They grade it. Then they will return those results to me. I'll notify you directly. They will also notify you, but it will take longer. So I'll be the one to first let you know. If you're not successful, you have a free retake, but you've got to wait 30 days, and then you can retake it. Now, it is available online, and given your location, it's probably best that you would do that unless you want to come down to Marietta and take it here, but it's probably not worth a 4-hour drive. So, anyway, so you can retake it online, but you got to wait a month. Hopefully that won't be an issue for anybody, but it might be. And usually you'll know within a week for sure. Let's see, any questions? Let you guys.
Are we allowed calculators on the exam?
Yeah, except, if you've got your own little Texas Instrument you can't use your phone as a calculator, but I will be providing little $1 cheapy calculators that you can use. There's nothing other than addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Those are the only things you have to do. So my little cheapy calculators work just fine. But if you got your favorite, you can use it. And it's not open book, so you can't open your book. You can use scrap paper. Don't want you writing in the booklet, the exam booklet. I'll provide you with some scrap paper. And one thing I always recommend people do, if you're worried about remembering equations or something like that, just get them in your brain and then write them down on the piece of paper as soon as you start the test. There are really only 3 equations we have to worry about, which is the power equation, watts equals amps times volts. Pretty straightforward. Ohm's law, which is volts equals amps times resistance. And then the voltage drop equation, which is Ohm's law adjusted for distance. So because we're given resistance in the National Electrical Code in ohms per 1,000 feet, voltage drop is calculated by just simply using Ohm's law, but then we need to know how many thousand feet of wire we're measuring. So we're given like stranded copper cable, 10 gauge has a resistance of 1.24 ohms per 1,000 feet. So how many thousand feet? So the voltage drop equation is voltage drop equals amps. That's going to be the IMP of a string because, that's the actual amps. Times resistance. Well, that depends on the wire size. Times twice the distance divided by 1,000 feet. Well, why is it twice the distance? It's because wire is a circuit. It goes there, it comes back. So you're measuring the resistance on that circuit. And so it's twice the distance. So if it's 200 feet, it's going to be 200 times 2, which is 400 feet, divided by 1,000. It's going to be 0.4. So you just take amps times the resistance times 0.4, and you'll get your voltage drop. If it were 500 feet, then you wouldn't even need the twice the resistance because it's just going to be 2 times 500 feet is 1,000 divided by 1,000. It's just going to be times 1. So, and you don't need to memorize tables. You don't need to memorize how many, what's the resistance of number 10 gauge wire. That'll be given to you. You don't need to know anything that's in a table will be provided to you on the test. So don't be worrying about memorizing really anything except for those three equations. One other little thing that you got to remember, well, I should say 2 other little things. One is that on the string calculations on the hottest day, the temperature of the array is not just ambient air temperature. You've got to add a heat factor. That heat factor is 25 degrees for ground-mounted systems, 30 degrees for ballasted systems, and 35 degrees for flush to roof mounted systems. So it'll tell you it's a ballasted or it'll tell you it's flush to roof. You've got to remember to add in 35 degrees. So that's something just to remember. And it's not hard, but it's 25, 30, 35. And another thing is in chapter 8, when it talks about ladder color coding, you're going to have to remember. And the thing that I do to remember that is I just use Reg Boy. Reg Boy is red, green, blue, orange, yellow. So RGBOY, Reg Boy. And that's how the color coding is. And red started at 250 pounds. Started at 200. Green was 225. Blue was 250. And that was all we had for a long, long time. So they were type 1, type 2, and type 3, right? Type 1 was the 250 blue. Type 2 was the green, 225, and red, type 3, 200. Then Americans discovered McDonald's, and suddenly we needed a heavier duty ladder. So instead of 250, now we've got 300, which was orange. But we had already run out of 1, 2, and 3 so it's type 1A. And then they discovered drive-through windows, and we went to 375, and that's the yellow. And that's type 1AA. So, but if you just remember Reg Boy, you'll probably be there, So we'll review all of these things Sunday morning, but those are the only things I can think of that you've got to memorize, except for all the answers in the book, so. So just everything's easy if you know how to do it. So this is all simple as long as you know how to do it. I always say that, brain surgery is easy if you know how. So it's, I just don't know how. Although I saw a disturbing thing that was like people's abilities, don't really match what they think they are. I just saw a thing that it said 46% of American males think that they could land a commercial airplane in an emergency. It's like, really? No, you're going to die. I mean, there's just no way. And then the women are sitting back there going, yeah, I know him. We're dead. No. We just know that. It's not a movie. So anyway, yeah, there's a whole study on that the thing that makes you stupid is the thing that prevents you from knowing that you're stupid. It's the same things. Okay, any questions before we call it a day? Yep.
This might be silly, but we won't need to use like the PV Watts website or anything, right? Because it's on paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there'd be no looking anything up on the computer. It's all right there. It might be that it's like the question says PV Watts has given you a result of 4.37 hours of insolation, whatever. The other thing I will caution you is many of the questions provide you with a lot more information than you need, and same way in the book. There's a lot of questions there that are just like, hey, yeah, guess what? You're at latitude 41. Who cares? You're there. And that's what, my argument is the real world provides you with more information than you need. You need to be able to sort through what do I need to know? What can I discard? So, and also the answers, just like in the book, if you screw it up, you might get one of the answers that are there. It's not like you can just keep doing math until one of your answers matches one of the answers that is a choice. Because if you're doing an equation and you forget to multiply it times 1.25 for wire size, well, that answer is going to be one of the answers. If you multiply it by twice, that answer is going to be there too. So, you don't know. You got to know what you're doing in order to get an answer, because the wrong answers are the wrong process leads you to an answer. So just not the right one. Okay. Any other questions?
Is there a time limit on the test?
Yeah, you've got 2 hours.
Okay.
Most people do not need 2 hours. If you need more because of a medical thing, if you've got dyslexia, if you've got something, just let me know. I mean, I don't want you to fail because you didn't have enough time. But most people are pretty much done within an hour, and then they're just checking things over, looking it over. It can be disconcerting if you're sitting there taking the test and you're halfway through and somebody gets up and leaves. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean they did better. They probably just gave up or something, who knows. But this last time I just did one in West Virginia, in Eastern West Virginia. It's the first time I've ever had a group where pretty much everybody stayed almost to the end, which was weird, but I think they were done, but they were checking twice. And actually the only person who failed was a science teacher from the college. So bad. You know how those teachers are, Ella. They're terrible at studying. So
Well, not French teachers. We like to memorize too.
oh yeah, French. I always we lived in France for a couple of years, just outside of Paris, and I always like to say French is where all the letters went to die. They've got all these extra letters you just don't use, and so we. What is it? That old joke about the 3 dogs, the Chihuahua, the French poodle, and the American mutt, where they say the French poodle says, "My name is Fifi. I spell it Fifi," and the Chihuahua says, "My name is Cici. It's Cici," and then the mutt says, "My name is Fido. It's spelled Phydeaux." So, Spanish was a lot easier language than French. And it was funny when we lived there because we would try. I mean, we tried a lot to speak. We were there for 2 years and I thought we would be better, but we weren't. And and especially my wife, and she would go to speak with someone. And we always just had the thing like, "Est-ce qu'il y a personne ici qui parle anglais?" It's like that kind of thing. And you go, no. And there's okay, d'accord. So I had this thing. If you speak slowly, perhaps I will understand you, and please forgive my pronunciation. So I'd always have these kind of things. And then you start speaking, and then the person would always go, okay. I do speak some English, it's like, yeah, all right, you're better than me. So, but our granddaughter lived with us and she was like 7 and we put her in a French school and she sat there for like 3 months and then all of a sudden just started speaking French. And then everywhere we went after that, they'd always say, "Why are you here with these Americans?" And she'd be speaking and she goes, no, they're my grandparents. Oh, they're visiting you here. And no, I live with them. I'm from Florida. And they go, no, you're from Paris. You have a Parisian accent, It's like, no, I'm from Florida, So they just acquire it. But then we moved to England and she came in, like we were there a week and she comes in, she goes, "Mommy, can I play in the garden with Harriet?" It's like, what are you? You're not British. Quit this, quit talking that way. It's like a
Yeah,
little
kids are
mimic.
Kids are like sponges, man. They just take it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, they like acquire it. They don't learn it. And
That's
you might
right.
appreciate this. My best friend, but also Catlin would play with Matthews, who was my friend. They were from Brazil. And when they first moved to America, Matthews didn't speak English. So they'd be playing and Matthews would be talking in Portuguese and Catlin be speaking in English and they're back and forth. Well, eventually Matthews could speak English. So then he was 8 or 9 and I was saying, "Matthews, what's the Portuguese word for table?" He'd go, "I don't know." It's like, "Well, what's the Portuguese word for this or that?" He'd go, "I don't know." And I say, "Okay." But he knew how to speak, he knew, but he never in his mind translated one word for another word. It was like, this is how you say, "I want to put the flowers on the table." And it's not that words equal words. It's just, that's what you say, and so there must be something to that in actually learning a language where you don't do it's like I asked our neighbor when we were trying to learn, and you know how you say "je vous en prie," as like you're welcome. But I said, what does that mean? How do you translate that? And Bernard, he's looking at it, I go, "It is a politeness." I'm like, "Yeah, but what does it mean?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a politeness."
If you pulled it apart, it would be, "I beg you some of it."
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like if I say "you're welcome," what does that mean?
That's right, exactly.
It's like, well, it's like Middle English "well met" or something, it's like "welcome," you've arrived well, or who knows what. Anyway, all right, that's enough about French and English. So see you guys all Saturday morning and 8 a.m. bright and early.
We're in that front building, right? The main building, because I don't know if you recall, there's a driveway down by the lake and there's another building, an observation building.
I know we were there last year. It's like got a little parking for the nature area, and it's got a little pond, not a pond, but almost like a little water fountain type thing. There's a circular driveway right in front of it.
Okay, I know. That's the main.
Yeah, and it's got some fish tanks or something inside. Yeah, and we're in one of those rooms. So whatever you call that. Is that the main building?
Yeah, that's the main building.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And there's just really one big meeting room that we're going to be in, like their classroom. So, and we'll have it to ourselves. So, all right. So I'll see you guys on Saturday. Take care.